All right, welcome back to the channel. Steven Espinoza tells the truth about boxing, that the networks lie to boxing fans more than any other sport. And that, my friend, is the truth. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. Subscribers, if you're not subscribed, I hope you accept my invitation to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you can get all the notifications for the content that we put out. Also, special thank you to my most important community, the Patreon community and my live stream communities. Thank you guys so much for your support in the Patreon, in the super chats, and the Cash App. Thank you guys. You guys are really, really important and allow us to put out this content on a daily basis. With what we believe here at Fanon International Boxing is the truth as we see it. And the truth as we see it has been echoed by Steven Espinoza, the head of boxing over at Showtime. He put out that boxing lies to fans more than any other sport, and that not every fight is some historical event. Sometimes a fight is just a fight. And as boxing fans, this is my part, as a boxing fan, I can appreciate that because sometimes a fight is just a fight. And if you're truly a boxing fan, if you really like the sport of boxing, you can enjoy a good fight. Not everything has to be a once in a lifetime or once in a generation experience. When you attempt, or networks attempt to make it that, it always drives me, it makes me try to, it reminds me of this line in a movie, The Incredibles. You ever seen The Incredibles? It was out when my daughter was a little kid, and it's the superhero movie. It's like a superhero cartoon. And there's this family of what they call supers. So one of the father at a point in time, when he was younger, he was a superhero going saving everybody. And he had this little kid who wanted to be just like him, but the dad disrespected him. The little kid winds up being this evil genius, right? Later on, years later. And this evil genius had devised this plan to use technology to be able to make himself appear as if he is a superhero. And then he's going to sell this material, these superhero gadgets to everybody so that everybody can have these superhero gadgets. And the line that he uses is, I want to make everybody specials. I want to make everybody super, because when everybody's super, nobody is. Phrased another way, when everything is special, nothing is. And that's what we find in boxing and what we've seen in boxing this year. I can't, off the top of my head, think of every example where I pointed out, as somebody that is a true fan of the history of boxing as well as current boxing, how many times, people have said things that are just blatantly not true in order to sell a fight. And when they've used historical events and try to make otherwise pretty bland events into these massive historical accomplishments. For example, Tyson Fury does not hold a belt. He doesn't hold a championship. He has not he has not beaten a legit top heavyweight since 2015. But yet somehow ESPN sells that he actually had a record, a historic record, that he has defended the lineal championship 5 times in the last 11 months, which is more than any lineal champion has done since Muhammad Ali, or whatever the lie was that they told. And the lie was twofold. He's not, number one, he's not a lineal champion. He's not. That is a fiction, once again, that was made up when they televised a fight between Vladimir Klitschko and Ruslan Shagayev. And Ring magazine put their belt on the line. Vladimir Klitschko was the former Ring Magazine champion. He wasn't the lineal champion. He never fought and beat Lennox Lewis. And he was never the number one heavyweight in the world, and Ruslan Shagayev the number two heavyweight in the world. Number one and number two heavyweight ranked by who? Ranked by a magazine. Come on, man. Ranked by the National Boxing's version of the National Enquirer. That's what it is at this point in time. The Ring Magazine is boxing's equivalent to the National Enquirer, with all these fake ranking systems and champions that they have. How do you become the number one heavyweight in the world when you got to draw against somebody? You're going to jump over the top of a reigning champion, 4-year reigning champion, when you ain't beat anybody, but you got to draw so you jump ahead of him? That's fantasy land. But then, not just the Tyson Fury lineal historical nonsense. Just look what they did with Canelo Alvarez, and this because that's ESPN. Look what they did with Canelo Alvarez and Henry Armstrong, and how he beat Sergey Kovalev, and now he's the first person to hold belts in 3 divisions since 1938. That's just not true. First of all, Canelo Alvarez holds two major belts, not 3. 2, not 3. 2, not 3. He owns 160 WBA champion and the 175 WBO champion. He is a secondary title holder at 168. It's just not true that he even holds 3, He doesn't. He holds 2. Secondly, he's not undisputed in any of them. And Henry Armstrong was undisputed at featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight all at the same time. And by the way, that includes all weight classes between featherweight and welterweight, which today would be 147, 140, 147, 140, 135, 130, and 126. It would be 5. In order to do the same thing, Canelo Alvarez would have to hold literally 20 championship belts to match what Henry Armstrong did. It's just not true. If he held all 3, but he doesn't. He only holds 2, and he only holds 1 of the 4 in those 2. There's nothing historic or Henry Armstrong level about what he did, and it's a straight up lie. But that's not the only lie they told. Okay, we were on the Fury lie. Then we moved to the Canelo Alvarez lie. Let's talk about the Vasily Lomachenko lie that ESPN tells. They literally changed his record when they told what it was on their channel. They changed it from one. They took an Orlando Salido loss off of his record. And when they talk about his record, they don't even tell you what his official record is, because BoxRec doesn't keep the official record. Fight Facts keeps the official record, and Fight Facts keeps on his record the fights from the World Boxing Series. The World Series of Boxing, which is a professional event that Lomachenko participated in that just disappeared. Boxing lies to boxing fans more than any other sport. You just wouldn't have people, ESPN in boxing, just add an extra 10,000 or so points to LeBron James' scoring record so he can pass up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and have people not catch that. You're not going to have people, even this idea of these people all being champions is ridiculous. In the NBA, in the NFL, in tennis, in golf, they have an event, they have a champion for that event. The US Open has a US Open champion. That's who the US Open champion is. Now, I'm not saying other sports don't tell stories, because they do. Tennis, they play this game with how many major championships Serena Williams has versus how many Margaret Court has. When we know perfectly well, if you're familiar with the sport of tennis, that she was not in an open era. The championships that they're counting weren't real championships. Similar to the championship that Canelo Alvarez is being counted by DAZN, and Canelo Alvarez isn't real either. The one he got off Rocky Fielding? Sometimes a fight is just a fight. And the history behind this is not anything new. This particular thing that Stephen Espinoza is talking about really has been going on since the beginning of boxing being televised. Because when boxing started being televised, in order to sell the fight, the marketing departments or the people that are trying to push these fights and get people to watch always try to add a little something extra to it to make it worth watching, right? So they try to sprinkle fairy dust on the top of it. And the fairy dust of choice in the 1950s, in the 1960s, and increasingly every year, it seems until then, are championship belts. Let's just sprinkle a little fairy dust on top of this, little championship belt fairy dust. All the way to now, when you went from two, and look at the development of the belts and how many extra belts were added from the time when fights started getting televised and television started to be in most homes in the United States. That started happening in the 1950s. It's not coincidental that in the 1950s, the NBA turned into the WBA, and then in the early 60s, the WBA then split to the WBC and the WBA, and then they started adding all kind of different weight classes to now you went from, in the 1940s, there being 8 champions in all of boxing in 8 weight divisions, to now there being twice 72 champions and counting in twice as many, in 16 weight classes. This has been the way that boxing has been going for a long time. But again, just like what I said about if everybody's special, nobody is. These guys are not all champions. They're not there. If there's an undisputed champion in a weight division, that's the only time that there truly is a champion. But what these guys are doing now is they just get more and more and more and more carried away with the things that they feel like they have to do in order to get the attention of boxing, in order to get the attention of boxing fans. Even this thing with this thing that started with Floyd Mayweather Jr. fighting a mixed martial artist against a boxer. Now they're putting YouTube guys fighting on pay-per-view just to try to give something different to it. Boxing needs to stop lying so much. Stop trying to make up so many records and just allow people to see good fights with 2 fighters in an interesting competition, man, because you really do get value out of these fights when the fights are good. But all of this trying to create undefeated fighters by matchmaking them to the end of the earth, man, it gets old. People see it and they lose interest, and that's what happens to a lot of boxing fans. And then when you start learning about it and you really start understanding and getting to the point of being a boxing fan, when you understand what the sanctioning bodies are, you understand what the ranking systems are, you have a reasonable appreciation and memory for what has happened in boxing over years, the more and more disgruntled you get, because the more and more they keep going down they just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. But anyway, I agree with Stephen Espinoza. Showtime's is not completely innocent in this regard either, but they're not going way over the top like ESPN and DAZN is going right now. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.